Take two. You're listening to Orange Pulp, take two. Now let's see how this goes. On my left, like I said before, for those who are listening on SoundCloud, you didn't hear that because of a quick little technical glitch. But on my left is Tim. On my right and behind me for most of the show because of the way we're in the studio, Zach. How you doing, guys?
Doing great. This is like building a fort inside your room when you have a hangout, snow day kind of thing. So we're doing pretty well. I brought Pat Patriot today because he's really excited about smashing the Giants.
You also brought Otto.
Otto's here too. I mean, it's too bad the loss yesterday, but I feel like he needs to see what we're doing.
And can I just say something? I think that most mascots need to be a little bit mean, need to look a little bit mean. You look at Pat Patriot there, he looks like he could go out and kick somebody's ass. You look at Otto the Orange over there.
Well, they have two different ones for the sports one versus the cute one.
That's what I don't understand. And when he comes out and he's carrying that flag and, like the big teeth, and then you look at him and he's like, where's the teeth? So, yeah, I don't know why they have two versions of the same. But he's Otto. And
he's Otto.
He did the thing!
America's greatest mascot is what they call him when he goes out. But, whatever.
Well,
he's here today.
Okay.
Without further ado, because, that was a lot of ado. We talk about something very quickly, very serious, and it was the just tragedy that happened in Paris, and everything going on. And it happened Friday, and it's still Saturday. You saw everyone trying to go out. I don't know about you, but my Facebook page is loaded with support, Peace for Paris, the support France, the Facebook profile picture getting changed to the French flag over top of it. And, one of the biggest moments was when you saw Army running out with the U.S. flag and
really cool.
with the
I
France
thought that
flag.
was such a classy
really cool,
move.
yeah.
And saying, hey, we're in this together. And, remembering September 11th being France saying, we're all American today because of such a horrible thing, and then doing justice of making sure we're there. And without going down the political role, this is a sports show, but just wanted to give it justice, and it puts things in perspective. It's one of those things, I don't know about you, but what you were doing Friday, but mine is package day. And an interview fell through, and things didn't load correctly, and I was thinking, oh, this is horrible. And then my phone gets blown up and said, 27 confirmed dead to start with. That was the first notification I got of it, and I went, well, okay, that's an eye-opener, and that it's one of those things that makes you realize we're lucky. And it's just on that, sports is very important in all of our lives, but there's things that are much, much more important, and that's one of them.
I said that yesterday. I said, this is something that's bigger than sports, and it's something that we need to realize needs to get the attention out there that it deserves. And so I was glad that so many people have gone out and shown their support for them and everything.
These are difficult things to talk about, and I guess being a former social studies teacher, I read a Facebook post yesterday from actually one of my original grad school professors who was also a social studies teacher, and he took to writing a paragraph discussing how, and this is going back in the archives here, but we don't win the Battle of Saratoga without the help of the French. And then the French get involved in the war, that turns the Revolutionary War right around. Mm-hmm. The French gave us the Statue of Liberty. There's a whole lot of ties over history between us and the French.
A lot of our Constitution was based on Montesquieu.
Exactly. And then you look, and then even when World War II came around, who was the country that then came back in and kind of saved France after they had been invaded by Germany? Yep. So there's a lot of relationships back and forth. And, not that is akin to what just happened in any way, shape, or form. But I just think, for me, you look at the beginning of the week, started out with all the events at Missouri that then spread to a whole lot of college campuses. And we know that civil rights and race relations are still almost just as big as they were decades ago because things have not improved. Even if we want to pretend they have, they haven't. And then you see something like this happen on a global scale. It's been a really tough week for a lot of people. And how they're going to grieve and how they're going to come and bounce back from this is going to be interesting, but hopefully they can mourn their losses and get back to some regular living.
You're listening to Orange Pulp. Also, if you're on Periscope and you have any questions, because of the setup that we have in here, we can't view the monitors, so send us at our Twitter page, Orange Pulp1, for any questions, comments. We can respond to them there. And for those who normally tune in to get more sports information, we will be getting to that in a second, but this just kind of trumps sports for a second.
Definitely.
And the idea of, I don't know, did you guys happen to see the video of Patrice Evra when France was playing Germany and there was the chance of explosions getting in, it was stopped from going in because of security when they found the explosive devices. But when the bomb goes off, you can hear it clear as day in the background. And Evra, he gets that puzzled face. He's just passing it to a back defender, to the center back. And he gets this look on his face of, I've played in so many games. That's not a soccer, or for them, football noise.
Right.
And you can tell right then that something's up, and in reality, it was one of the explosions going off just outside the stadium.
Well, Brian, you're more of a soccer guy than all of us, even though I'm sure we tune into World Cup and some Team USA sort of things. But I actually thought, even though he might have had a look on his face, the way they played on amidst this bomb sort of going off, I thought was really interesting because, like, the soccer players, they see that, like, little crazy stuff happen. They throw, fireworks on the field, fans jump the fence, craziness happens, and they're able to continue playing. Had that game happened in the United States, I don't know, Zach, how the reaction would have been by athletes.
It would have just... It doesn't matter what sporting event it was. It would have stopped.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of got in conversation with people over in France, done time abroad, gotten talking with one of them. From the perspective I've gotten is they didn't know what was going on. And it was, so none of the people had any clue what was going on. So it was kind of, when you're in a sporting event, you're sheltered. And it sounded different, but it was not one of those things that triggers something. So it was one of those where the reason why it continued on, and they've already delayed the next game that was supposed to happen and then the NFL and other sporting events are going out and saying, hey, we need to beef up security, we need to go through that, and that's here in the U.S. They're putting games on hold over in France and Paris. And then, did you guys see the thing with David Luiz and with Edison Cavani?
Are those soccer players?
Yes.
Because you got to tell us that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it was
because
it's kind of like for us, like Landon Donovan, and then you start mentioning, and you get further and further away.
I might be able to pick up Michael Bradley or Tim Howard, but after that, I'm like,
David Luiz is a defender for Brazil. Edison Cavani is a striker for Uruguay, and they both play for Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, which is in Paris. So they both issued of being concerned about coming back because they're on international break right now.
Right.
Obviously, that's what the two international teams are playing.
Yeah.
And David Luiz, I don't have the quote exactly on hand, but paraphrasing, it's my job. I'm going to come back to play, but I have a family. It's one of those things that scares you, and I'm a little hesitant to come back. And Edison Cavani's similar type of vein. So it's one of those things where you're like, it's just a weird phrase of thinking, could this have happened? And that was at the stadium where they normally would have been playing.
Right. And we don't want to be irresponsible, although, reports have come out, who is responsible for this. But I thought about the uniqueness of sports. On that day, I happened to tune into SportsCenter kind of when this was happening. Stephen A. Smith was doing SportsCenter. Did a pretty good job. I was a little surprised.
I also turned into that, and I was like, oh, that's a little weird.
Interviews well, but I remember he was talking to Bob Lee, and Bob Lee was saying the fact that there was a lot of international qualifiers, and maybe even some friendlies going on.
A lot of it was friendlies more than anything else. It was international break.
But all those international soccer, football games taking place at once, and then an event like this happens just, feet from the stadium. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that was attached to any irony with the attacks themselves or what these people were trying to prove, but that happened. So
you're listening to Orange Pulp, and we're going to be transitioning to sports in just a second. Our hearts go out to all of those affected. There goes Pat.
Balls, but I caught him, just like Gronk's going to do today.
So is that a prelude to the Patriots and Giants
not
today?
Not a prelude at all. That's just me moving this. That's all it is.
It's just an interesting.
So
just off to Paris, and one of those weird live things where there's almost a moment we predicted that going to happen. So that's why that took a little precedent right there. But our hearts, and we know they're much more important. Hope for everything out there goes well. You're listening to Orange Pulp. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. Obviously, if you're watching on Periscope, you're going, they didn't leave. Well, we plug and play afterwards. That's the world of not going live. And
it's the beauty of it.
Hey, if we can get some sponsors, we'll be plugging you during that break, and then it'll make more sense.
That's right.
If anybody wants to sponsor us, we're ready to go.
Sounds great to me.
But until then, we're not saying any company names in this show.
Well, that just changes everything of what my show was supposed to be. So, getting off, we're in Syracuse. Syracuse football played the number 1 team in the country last year, Clemson.
Go Tigers!
And toss out to Ty Butler, always having the comment of a tale of two tapes. Well, it's really a tale of two teams with the same result here. A home team and an away team for Syracuse. If they're home, they're going to play well above themselves. You get the shallow roof, and it gets a lot of noise, even with the crowd not being filled up. But the same result being, they lose. And they lost again 7 straight times, now losing 37-27. Zach, what do you make of just the game as a whole?
I think that one of the more surprising things to take out of it is that Clemson didn't really look like the number 1 team.
They did for the first 2 minutes.
Well, for the first 2 minutes, yeah. But after that, I don't know if it was like their version of Clemsoning this year, or if it was them playing down to their opponent, or
let down after Florida State.
Yeah. I mean, last week they have to have that furious rally to come back against Florida State to clinch the Atlantic Division, and then this week they say, well, we're already in the ACC championship game. We can just sort of walk out there and take this game. Sort of a surprising thing about Syracuse, though, when LSU came here, final score was 34-24, 10-point loss. Number 1 team in the country, 37-27 against Clemson.
Mahoney at quarterback both times.
That's true.
Mahoney at quarterback both times.
On that for sure.
I'm sorry, is maybe Dungy shouldn't be the starter?
I don't know. I mean, you kind of look at... First, you have to look at Eric Dungy's health. I mean, I don't want to be unfair to the kid because I don't know him very well, and hopefully he gets better and maybe does see some action before the rest of the season. But there's also that possibility, too, that he is not going to play, and that we're going to see a little bit of a development from Zach Mahoney. And, I don't want to over-speculate, but you look going into next season, Terrell Hunt may or may not be coming back, depending upon what his health situation is.
Does he get that 6th-year health waiver?
Does he get the waiver? You've got Dungy with, a resume of what he's done this year. Then you look at what Mahoney's done this year. Does it maybe even give Dungy and Mahoney opportunities to transfer someplace where they know, again, they can play within a year or two and develop their skill even more and still have eligibility left? So they're proving some things for themselves in addition to proving something for Syracuse.
Of those two, I think that the more likely to transfer would probably be Zach Mahoney.
Right.
Because he's proven that he can go out against big teams and at least keep the team in the game. He could transfer to a lower-level Division I school.
Albany, if you're looking. FCS. We could use Zach Mahoney right now.
Or a high FCS team or something. And, get them in those games, keep them in them, and, show that he can be competitive. And if he's playing lesser competition to an extent, maybe he could pull out a few wins or something for a team.
What do you make of just the turnovers to start that first quarter? And, I mean, it was sloppy football. I mean, not even 2 minutes in the game, Clemson's up 14-0. And then before the first quarter is done, it's 21-14 in favor of Clemson.
Well, I think Syracuse, there's a nerve factor when you're playing the number 1 team in the country, even though it's at home. And I believe that, Mahoney fumbles that kind of initial snap, and everyone in the place is thinking, okay, we're only staying until halftime, maybe, because this is going to be a rout. But it also shows as Zach was touching on, the extreme vulnerability of Clemson. And because they, kind of were sloppy early, too. I mean, that first quarter lasted an hour. Regardless of the points scored, there was a lot of different things that happened. But I think for Syracuse, because they've been playing long games, and even some of these losses have been 3.5, 4-hour games, that's nothing for them to have a quarter that lasts, longer than it should. So I think the big time of the game and just the overall kind of gets in players' heads, and that leads to the sloppiness.
You're listening to Orange Pulp with Zach, Tim, and
you're
then,
like blindfolded now. You
can't
see
it's so weird. It's a reverse perspective on trying to do. For those viewing on Periscope, because of the setup we have in here, if you're just tuning in, we can't view the questions, so send it to our Twitter page, Orange Pulp 1, And follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, follow us on our SoundCloud account, Orange Pulp. We're going to be putting all the previous episodes in there, and it'll be just listening to. Thanks for watching. But back to...
Wait, real quick, because I just got a text that Mom and Dad want a shout-out because they're watching. So Charlie and Connie Ferguson back in New Hartford are tuning in to see their son.
As
well as Zach and Brian, they said. So just to give that shout-out for
Hi, Mama and Papa Ferguson.
Hi, Mom and Dad Ferguson.
Let's see how awkward we can make it. But back to Syracuse losing to the number one team. I mean, everyone picked Clemson to win that game, and a lot of us picked in a shutout, or picked out in a blowout game. We have a shutout prediction, 56-0 of our
54-0.
54-0.
And I thought earlier in the week 45-17. I just thought Syracuse would score, and then Clemson would beat them. But
I want to just throw something out there about that first quarter. 30 seconds into the game, they have already returned the opening kickoff like 15 yards. Opening kickoff return, not that great. Deshaun Watson drops back into the pocket and throws a bomb.
Looked like Florida State all over again, kind of McGuire.
69 yards.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful throw, beautiful catch. I mean, he just chucks it down the field, wide receiver lays his hands out, and the ball just falls right into it.
Being in the idea of, I saw it was 14-14, Syracuse tied with Florida State, and I went, well, this is more of the same. I feel like I've seen this script before. Syracuse gives you this much hope, and for those listening, I've got my fingers about a quarter of an inch apart, and they give you this much hope going, maybe they are going to flash in the bottom, but I went, I've seen this too many times. They're going to get blown out. The blowout never happened, but from that point on, they were never in that game for a win, per se.
I think there was a reason why they weren't in that game, and this is what I've been salivating to talk about and hopefully, not fall on deaf ears. But there was momentum switches throughout that first half, particularly in the first quarter. I mean, it was like a shootout, gunslingers, getting scored at 21-14. But the officiating, again, for the ACC is so ridiculously suspect. We know the fact of the Miami win over Duke and the suspension of those officials. I don't know if any of them ended up on today's crew or yesterday's crew because they had a 2-week suspension.
Yeah,
so did they fill the whole suspension yet or not? I don't know if they did. It
would have been Halloween, so that would have been the second game.
Yeah,
that would have been the second game. So probably none of those guys, but... you look at the first one that really got to me, too, was the fact that you get this call for, illegal hands to the face. And then, obviously Coach Schaefer's going to get fired up. And I talked to some people yesterday. I talked to Zach. I said, if this happens in a basketball game and a coach doesn't like a particular call, chances are if they get fired up the first time, all they're going to get is a technical. And it's not going to be anything after that. But with football, it's like, well, you can't control yourself and you can't control your sideline. It's a 15-yard penalty. That was 30 yards worth of penalties in less than 5 seconds. And then you take it another step further when, Jawan Dowles gets that great interception. Syracuse, they should have stayed on the sidelines, but they're excited. You have a chance to possibly beat the number one team in the country.
I get that, but you have to know the rule. You have to know the rule.
I know you have to know the rule, but I just think that maybe even the quickness of it, of throwing that flag, maybe if they're going to throw the flag anyways, just let the team kind of not finish their celebration, but get close to it, and then everyone can say, oh, yeah, it was excessive. But this was like, he's on the ground, his teammates are trying to pick him up. It's so close to the sideline. You can't tell if guys have come off the sideline or on the field because they're all crunched right there together. Boom, flag goes right up in the air.
I was 10 feet away.
Yeah.
Being down on the sidelines yesterday, first off, coolest experience ever, just being that close to the game. I was 10 feet away when they were celebrating that interception.
Yeah.
Somehow still missed the photo shot. But,
you were in the scrum. That's why we got the penalty.
That's it. I was the excessive celebration. But I didn't see anything that I would have thrown a flag for. And, I mean, the officials, I watched him throw the flag. It fell down in the middle
it did.
of the celebration. And I was like, were you aiming for that?
Yep.
But, watching it, I was like, okay, they're celebrating, they're excited. They were bringing him off the field.
Yes.
I did not think that looked like excessive celebration.
It didn't to me, but we have the idea you're going off a switching field, and I get all you're saying is the players going on and off. But it's just one of those situations where you've already been warned, you've already gotten the 15-yard penalty. I didn't like it when I watched it, but you got to keep that in mind. And we'll talk later on in the show Oklahoma versus Baylor, which Oklahoma self-destructed and still won, but there were so many mental mistakes. You can't have those 15-yard penalties. As awful as they are now, Oklahoma's were in a bit different. We'll talk about that more later here on Orange Pulp. But closing thoughts on the Clemson versus Syracuse game.
I really don't want to speculate about people's job statuses. I've done that either here or stuff I've written on Scout.com. But I just, if you're going to look at it, if I'm in a position to evaluate anybody's statuses, I understand that the season has been in many ways, a disappointment on a lot of levels. But in the two biggest games of the year against, and I don't remember what LSU's rank was when they played Syracuse.
LSU was 7.
They were 7. So you look,
no, 8.
8. Okay, so you play a number 8 and then you play a number 1. Two teams in the top 10 that you don't beat, but
you shouldn't have been as close as you were.
Exactly, and those were some of the best performances probably all year by an unranked opponent against a ranked opponent. So the final thought is just kind of like, this is a great thing for Syracuse to build on. No offense, Zach, but I hope they can go down to NC State and murder them. I doubt they will, though, but I just hope that they're going to carry this vengeance. We want to win. And then that last game against BC, toss-up. I mean, BC plays a great defense, but they don't score very well. So, if anything, I think this maybe propels them to just use these last two games as a proving ground.
Zach?
You want to see them go out there and perform well against an unranked opponent. But you've seen how they play against unranked opponents on the road.
Yeah, I know.
And it is incredibly disappointing. I would not be surprised next week to see Syracuse out there on the field. I'll be up in the press box watching that game.
That's right, you will.
So I'm really excited about that.
Back patter? Is that where we're going to go? Like media back patter?
Yep, that's right. I'll be up in the press box there. And but I would not be surprised to see a 41-17 game.
I would not be surprised at all. I was thinking 30-point loss. For those watching on Periscope, send your questions to Orange Pulp 1 on Twitter. We can't see it because of the setup we have. For those listening on SoundCloud, subscribe. We'll be uploading the rest of them. Watching on YouTube for our video up top of there. Subscribe to our page. Like the other ones. Communicating back and forth would be great. You're listening to Orange Pulp. We'll be right back with your national segment. Welcome back to the action here at Orange Pulp. And the reason why I say action is because, well, there's about 50,000 things going on right now. We got Periscope going. We've got our actual podcast going for SoundCloud. And we've got the camera running for YouTube.
We really picked it up this week.
Who else is doing this? Is there anyone else doing podcasts that they're filming too? We might be blazing trails here.
On Syracuse, I don't think there's anything.
No, I don't even know nationally. Maybe there is too. There's some people that probably film their podcasts.
Well, I mean, I've seen the Fantasy Football Podcast is in the process of getting it done. I don't think they've uploaded
in the process.
Yeah, I don't think
we're
they've
going
uploaded
live
it
right now.
Yeah, so and then I've seen some Periscopes doing it, random segments here. For Periscope, as we said before, obviously, you're getting the full stream of everything running, but we kind of have to equal them together for those who come and go. Different audience every 7 minutes for radio, every 11 minutes for TV, and I think Periscope, they're in the process of working, and it's obviously going to be lower because of the instantaneous factor.
I'm going to guess about every 30 seconds.
Yeah,
probably.
That just might be.
Yona, you better still be in, buddy. I want to see a text that confirms it.
If you have any questions... post your questions to Orange Pulp 1, or if you're so happy to give out your text numbers, if that's what you're going to be checking, should we just blast your number out there
no,
so
please
you get
don't.
instantaneous
Please
numbers?
Not yet.
Okay, so now, for the national games. We talked about we were going to be previewing it. Oklahoma versus Baylor. Oklahoma wins this game, but as I touched upon earlier, so many mental mistakes. Zach, what did you take away from Oklahoma winning this game, not even Baylor losing it?
I've got to... Honestly, I'm kind of surprised. I thought that Baylor was going to go out there and continue the hot streak that they've had all
I thought
season.
It was just going to be an outscore game.
I thought so, too. I mean, as low-scoring as it was, and I don't know if it's because Seth Russell's out, but it's like you and I have talked about, Brian. We almost think that virtually anybody could be plugged in at quarterback in the Baylor system. and they would still be able to succeed. They'd still be able to go out there and throw for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
He had a great passing game. He's just not quite the runner that Russell was. And then for Oklahoma, they got the running game going. Tim, what did you make of just being able to gash them with realizing that they have Perline and Mixon?
Well, I think what we're seeing now, and particularly with this game here with Oklahoma and the success that they've had, is we're seeing like a real massive shuffle now of the 4 teams in the playoff. I know Baylor was just outside and they weren't in it, but there are some good teams out there that have not been talked about a whole heck of a lot. I think Oklahoma got like some early preseason kind of mentions.
But then that loss to Texas. But the good thing about that could be like Ohio State last year. You lose in the beginning of the season when we hype you up, and then we're like, oh, they're done. We write them off, and then 4 weeks later, without watching any of the games, it almost seems, then they jump back into discussion because they haven't lost to anyone, making a one good movement, and that puts Oklahoma in a great place.
It does.
And something that I want to throw out there. The quarterback that started for Oklahoma against Texas, very similar to Zach Mahoney, former walk-on.
This is
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, so good. 270 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing, accounted for 4 touchdowns through the 1 pick, but had a very, very good game and did the read option beautifully.
Well, when I watched a little bit of the end of the game, and actually I was doing some work, so I wasn't as locked in maybe as people were across the country, but I was really impressed with Mayfield's ability to get out of the pocket and even throw kind of on the run. There was a couple highlights where I saw where he was able to kind of scramble around. His footwork was really good, and I was looking, some NFL kind of potential here. This is the way you see some of these NFL quarterbacks move and still be able to throw. Mm-hmm. Sometimes with the college guys, they're on the run and they're kind of flicking it and they don't know where it's going to go. So this Mayfield kid can play, and if he's kind of peaking right now, then watch out for Oklahoma continually moving up in the rankings.
It's been a conversation, Baker Mayfield as a dark horse to win the Heisman if everything breaks correctly, and then Oklahoma puts themselves in a position to make a run for the playoff and being in that contender conversation. Does this knock Baylor out of the playoff conference with a November loss? We talked about the positives of backloading your schedule. This is definitely a negative. A November loss is so crushing.
Oh, yeah. I think that, and at one point I was so high on the Baylor Bears. I had them as my 2 seed, and now the way that they've gone out and played in the last couple of weeks, and especially losing this game to Oklahoma, I think that I'm not sure about this. This might be the first week that Baylor has gone out and not scored 60 points in a game. And this is the first week that they've played a team with a winning record.
Well, it was their first time on defense when their defense came out happened this game where they were trailing. That was the first time it happened when their defense was on the field and they were losing for the first snap. So, and transition to another team that had playoff chances and it looks like it's going to be gone. Oregon upset Stanford, and I feel a little good about this because I went, hey guys, Oregon-Stanford, sneaky interesting game because Oregon's played better and Stanford, well, they're a 10-point favorite, but I just don't see it, so that's my pat on the back. So what do you make of it? For a failed 2-point conversion is what gives Oregon the victory, what would have tied it?
Well, Oregon obviously in previous years have been much more stout and have been in the national conversation and have really, at this point, we haven't heard a whole lot.
Losing Chip Kelly a few years ago and Mariota last year will do that.
On Chip, but
Chip was one of the best coaches.
He got the program going. He got him on the map. I mean, they weren't in that national title game against Auburn if not for Chip Kelly.
Then losing Mariota the next year, last year it was. It's going to make an impact.
It is. Yeah. It certainly is. But again, this is another example of where, like it or not, and I'm not sure whether I always like it, but college football is a tournament every single weekend,
which makes it so interesting.
And it does. And I guess I like sports more where there's a kind of defined playoff situation. So for me to see college football as a tournament is a little, but.
Well, that means that
it gets
a defined
exciting
playoff situation from week 1.
Exactly, and
with the potential to lose early.
So if you get, we'll go through it later. But if you ask me my 4, I'm starting to get concerned now.
We will be giving our top 4 on what it will be later on in the show. You're listening to Orange Pulp. You set me up, so I had to take it.
No, that's fine. But so I'm not certain who I want in there because now we've got Oklahoma in the discussion. Now we got Stanford falling out of the discussion. Oklahoma State really positioning themselves very well to possibly get in the 4. So this is like, oh my God, but the thing is too, you said backloading the schedule for Baylor, going back to that game. But that's a conference game, so they really didn't have control over where that was positioned.
Big 12 sets it up to backload their schedule because they want as many teams. They have no championship game. They want one true champion in case of last year where there was 2.
Right.
And then they want it where they have as many ranked teams playing each other as possible.
Right.
So it's a what have you done for me lately? The downside obviously being if you lose in November, you're pretty much out.
That's what I wanted to get to. If you lose in November, and Zach certainly chime in on this as well, but you lose in November, there's only a couple weeks left to the regular season. There's
only so many weeks left to bump yourself back up and try to get into the conversation again.
If you're losing right now, think about it. It's just like any other sport where if you lose late, most likely you're losing and you're out. So it's kind of that elimination is happening as it should late in the year so they can get to the 4. So I don't know if that logic makes sense.
I completely agree with that.
It's one of those weird things. It was this way in the old system with the BCS. It's this way with the 4-team playoff. It's if you lose, all losses are not created equal, which makes sense. But also the timing of your loss is not created equal. If you lose in the beginning of the season, we can easily forget that, i.e. this year, Alabama. Last year, Ohio State. So, and it looks like it could be with Oklahoma State, or with Oklahoma, not Oklahoma State. With Oklahoma having lost to Texas, as bad as that loss was, I could almost see that being a parallel to Ohio State last year going, yeah, you lost to a team who was not nearly as good as you, that is having a bad season, but we can overlook it because of how well you've played on the other thing. I can see a path for that happening. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I see a path for it happening. I
have my thoughts on that, and we'll probably get into that in a minute.
We would talk about that with our top 4 playoff coming on later on the show, and transition to another game where, I don't know about you, but I did not see this one coming. Arkansas upsetting LSU. Now, Fournette had a decent game, over 100 yards rushing, had a touchdown. Leonard Fournette, the Heisman candidate, who came off a bad game against Alabama last week.
Fournette did not have over 100 yards. He only had 91 yards.
Sorry, I thought you just went over the 100-yard mark, but had 91 yards. Sorry for that.
It's all right. I'm the one with the computer in front of me for the fact checking. So
yeah, but I still had it marked down as over 100 yards. So Arkansas beat LSU, and I did not see it. Now, I thought Arkansas was a good team last year, but a tough out, as I always say. I rank a team when they're not going to be going for the title. Do I want to play them? Do I want the team that I support, that I'm thinking is going to make the college football playoff, do I want them playing? And Arkansas last year was that team. This year, I didn't think so much. But clearly, they showed up in a big way.
They did. Having seen LSU play here, I thought, at least early in the season, I thought that they were really solid. I thought they were a really good team. And I thought that they were going to have the opportunity to play for a national title. The way that they played last week against Alabama, and then the egg that they went out and laid last night against Arkansas. What are they doing? I mean, they obviously don't care about the national title. They don't care about the SEC title. I mean, Leonard Fournette, yeah, he's still really good. It's like everybody's game planning to stop him, and it's working now. And I think that LSU had formed to be such a one-dimensional team where they could just hand the rock off to Leonard Fournette, let him run up the field, and now that teams have started to figure out how to stop him, they don't know how to game plan against that.
You're listening to Orange Pulp with Tim, Zach, and myself. For those watching on Periscope, send your questions to Orange Pulp 1 on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. For those watching on YouTube, subscribe to the other channels. And for those listening on the podcast on SoundCloud, the rest of them will be uploaded soon. Your takeaway on LSU's fail.
Well, I don't want to get in trouble here with our female viewers, and I hope there's a lot of them, okay? But I know that
Shred,
no, because I think women can use this same analogy for guys, right? So it's the old good from far, but far from good, right? So you think somebody's great, and then you get to know them, or you see them up close, and you're like, not so good. And I know women are saying that about guys too. So this is interchangeable.
Nobody's ever said that about me.
I know no one said it about me either, but I know it's said somewhere. So,
No, they can tell with me. Oh, that's not so good from far away.
Ooh, okay, all right.
See, they see me from far away, and they're like, nice. They see me up close, even better.
Well, whatever you need to sleep at night. But that's what LSU is to me. They're good from far, but far from good. And I'm not saying that they're a terrible team. It's but I think when they came here to Syracuse, okay, we were, I think Fournette had just come off one of his huge performances. Mm-hmm. He was the one driving the bus for this LSU, experience, and everyone being so excited about how good they were. But as you've seen him kind of not fall back completely, but fall back, and the reliance on him to pretty much be their offense. I know Harris, the quarterback, Brandon Harris, has kind of increased his passing. In fact, yesterday, 21 for 35 for 271. So you've seen some growth out of him. But at the same time, I think we're really starting to learn that maybe this LSU team was an early starter, but now they're kind of falling back to the pack. And, I said Clemson was a bunch of posers yesterday. Maybe LSU is the real poser this year. So,
question within the SEC as well. Georgia barely beats Auburn, who's been struggling this year. Beats them 20-13. Auburn's been playing a little bit better of recent, but still, it was not a good game. Is Mark Richt going to be out as head coach of Georgia? I mean, there's been rumblings for the last couple of years.
Is Georgia ranked?
No.
Okay, they are unranked.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like Mark Richt. I don't know if it's just as a person. I don't know if I like him as a coach.
Everyone likes him as a person from everyone. I've never met the man personally, but everyone said great things about him.
Everything that I've ever heard about him, everybody loves him. And I've always thought that he was sort of like, obviously not the top because he doesn't have a national title. Maybe not the next level because he can't quite get into the top at the time of the BCS, now in the college football playoff. I think he's probably like at that third level coach where he's good enough to coach in the SEC, but maybe not really let his team be really super competitive every year.
My biggest question is, isn't there a precursor of this? Tennessee a few years ago when 9-3 wasn't good enough for them. And then now Butch Jones is a fantastic head coach, but they've been struggling for years to get back up to that.
There's a few teams now in the SEC that used to be the perennial ones you'd talk about. Even Florida's now rebuilding. Georgia, we'll see if they rebuild. Same thing with Tennessee. I think Herschel Walker looks great in some of those AT&T commercials. If they could sue him back up at Georgia, put Stafford at QB, now we got made Gurley in the backfield too. We got a good shot for the Bulldogs, but they're always one of those teams again in the past. The Bulldogs used to always get top rankings, and then we'd get midway through the year, and they would be falling back.
I think that's wrong to say because they were just a touchdown away from beating Alabama in the year they won the title in the SEC championship game.
But how do they get there, though? Some of those divisions
are
not as...
Yeah, I get the East and West, but there was a time where we used to say the East was the gauntlet.
Right, that's true. That
was probably 7 or 8 years ago when Florida was awesome every year. Georgia was right up there.
And before you had the merger with... I know they put Missouri in the East, but Texas A&M in the West.
When you have it where... The big thing here is they haven't won the East when you expect them to of recent, with Florida on a downturn, Missouri winning it twice. That can't be your main competition of winning, and they haven't just gotten to the East. But my question now is, if Mark Richt is out, obviously he's not, but if it does happen, who do you hire for him? Who's your one candidate that you would pitch? Because it's got to be a big name.
Yeah, that's the thing. It has to be a big name.
To give you guys a little time to think, my thought was try to do anything you can to get Brian Kelly. Reason being, he made Notre Dame so deep.
You're not going to
but he's not going to leave Notre Dame.
Here's my reason for thinking it could happen. Now, obviously, I like Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I think Brian Kelly's obviously an amazing coach. He's got a lot more restrictions to deal with at Notre Dame. He gets those classroom violations that at other places would get a game suspension, 2-game suspension. They're gone for an entire season at Notre Dame. He's had injuries after injuries, which can happen anywhere, but he's built up such a depth that if he can recruit Notre Dame, which the glory of recruiting Notre Dame is gone. There's no more don't even, if we're going to go down that road, don't even give me the appeal, because the appeal of playing on a national game is no longer there. The selling a pitch of being roommates with a non-athlete in a dorm, that's not exactly something you can sell.
But that's not where I'm going with it, though, Brian.
Okay.
If you look now, they're in the conversation for the 4 teams.
Yes,
okay?
yes, but
if
year
they,
in, year out.
Well, who knows about year in and year out? We can only say for this year. But, I mean, if they stay in that conversation, they end up in that playoff, you're thinking under Brian Kelly, they played in a BCS title game where they lost to Alabama.
They got destroyed by Alabama.
But they were there.
Yes.
And think about the years prior to Kelly coming along when they were never there. I mean,
yes.
Charlie Weiss had a year where they were really good.
1 year.
Yeah, so I get the point about the restrictions at Notre Dame and all that kind of stuff.
This is why I see all the hoops he has to jump through. I can see him wanting to leave Notre Dame and seeing it as I'm not saying he wants to leave.
No,
I know it. This is just from afar. And then Georgia recruits more talent than California.
Well,
gets more.
That may
turns
be true,
out
but
more
why
D1
is
football players.
Why is it not panning out for them? All the great recruiting, and why is they're just.
I'm just saying there's so much talent base there that I can see. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I can see a logical connection to bring all of these things together.
Well,
I have an idea that it might be a little bit more far-fetched. I don't know if it's more far-fetched than Brian Kelly, because I don't like that idea at all. But
I don't see it being that far-fetched. I also don't want it to happen. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I can see it happening.
But we're looking at another coach in the SEC, not a head coach. He has former head coaching experience. At the SEC level, in the Pac-12, and in the NFL, we're talking Lane Kiffin.
There's already rumors of him at Maryland.
Not a bad
I thought of Kiffin.
But he'll leave if he doesn't like the first semester. He'll leave and go back to the NFL. So I wouldn't trust a guy like that.
Well, I know you look at something like that, but you see he's somebody that does have success. Maybe he didn't have that much success in Oakland, but you know what? That's Oakland.
They're good, by the way.
They're good this year, by the way. But he had success at USC. He has shown that he can really be a good offensive coordinator at Alabama. He had a lot of success at Tennessee. Maybe he's able to bring his dad in as a defensive coordinator at Georgia and really bump that program up really high.
Him and Dad go together like peanut butter and jelly, don't they?
Yep,
but
really
some sons and fathers have those great relationships, just like you and me, Dad. And so that would be good if he did that.
You're listening to Orange Pulp. If you're watching on Periscope, send your questions on Orange Pulp 1 on Twitter. Because of the setup, we can't see the camera for Periscope. If you're listening on SoundCloud, the rest of the pages will be being put up. If you're on YouTube for watching our video, connect to the other ones, watch the video. Thanks for tuning in. However you're listening, however you're watching, thanks. This is Orange Pulp. And the connection of the top 4. We hinted at who do we want. Who is your top 4, Zach?
Wow. So I've tossed and turned over this, thought about it a lot.
You lost sleep over this?
I didn't lose any sleep over this.
We don't sleep anyway.
Yeah, I already don't sleep well. So I am going to go with, I haven't put this team at number 1 all year, but I don't think that Clemson played well enough yesterday to prove to me that they deserve that number 1 ranking. I'm throwing the Buckeyes back up there at number 1.
Why do you have Ohio State number 1? Why do you have Ohio State number 1? That's all I've been hearing. So why do you have Ohio State number 1?
I have Ohio State number 1. I'm not going to go with that, because they're the reigning national champion and they haven't lost. I'm not going to make that argument. I'm going to say because they look like the best team in the country. I mean, just period. They look like they're the best team in the country.
Number 2.
Yes, they haven't lost. Sure, they're the reigning national champion. We'll go with all that. But to me, watching them on the field week in and week out, they look like they're the best team.
And they've improved as the season's gone on. What's your number 2 team?
Number 2, I'm dropping Clemson down to number 2. They're still unbeaten, still the class of the ACC. And to me, I would, behind maybe the SEC, I would put the ACC as the number 2 football conference.
That's a different discussion for a different day.
It's a Homer reference, but
it is.
We're going to let them have it.
We're going to go with that. And then I'm going to drop Alabama down to number 3. Sure, they look like a really difficult team to beat. They look solid right now. And I really just want to see that Clemson-Alabama matchup. That's really why I'm doing that. And then I'm going to throw Notre Dame in at number 4.
What's your top 4, Tim?
Well, it's funny because other than Syracuse, I haven't never really had a college football team that I rooted for my whole life because I don't know, haven't been into it as much. But
well, the Orange are officially eliminated from bowl contention.
Been eliminated for quite a while, unfortunately.
But they were only officially eliminated yesterday
from bowl contention.
Oh yes, that's right, because they could have won out the last 3. So it's funny because there's more teams like I don't like and want to criticize more than teams I actually like.
I always love how you stay unbiased. It's just
it's, me and Simmons. Bill, if you're watching this,
or if you're listening,
we're like
since
each
we're
other.
On SoundCloud,
That's true. We are on SoundCloud like Bill Simmons. So, I'm going to put Alabama at number 1. I don't like Nick Saban, don't like Alabama, but they have proven that they're really good, and they destroyed LSU. I like them in that number 1 spot, at least for right now, because I'm always the current. It could change
there are
very much.
2 undefeated teams left.
I know that.
Alabama has lost.
I know that, okay? And I understand that loss was
early to Ole Miss. A loss
should
be held against you, though.
It should be, but they're my number 1, all right?
See, I don't like them at number 2.
I can't even get through my 4 here because you guys are cutting me off.
Yeah, you're right, Tim.
That's right.
That's right, Tim.
We like to interrupt people. That's what we do.
Let me just say them quick.
We are BDJ for a reason.
Because I'm not even excited about any of this. So Alabama number 1, Ohio State number 2. Okay, they're still undefeated. I want to do things that are unpopular. Oklahoma State, number 3, after what I've seen the last couple weeks. And although Clemson is undefeated, I said I would either move them to number 3 or number 4. I'm going to move Clemson to number 4. Then, if that holds up, you get an Alabama-Clemson in a first round. You get an Ohio State against Oklahoma State in a first round, these semifinal games. And then maybe we get Alabama-Ohio State for the College Football Playoff Championship. That's how I figure it out.
Interesting.
I was never been good at math, so I'm going to use other equations to figure things out randomly. So.
I'm just going to throw a no comment out there, and we're gonna agree with that.
That's fine.
My top 4 had stayed the same for a long time. It kind of has to change now with their losing. Number 1, Ohio State, staying there. We already know my reason. If you listened before, haven't lost one national title last year. Primary pieces in. Number 2, Clemson. I'm bumping them up a little bit. I know it's weird to say that after a narrow 10-point victory over Syracuse. The reason why I did it is because they went into Syracuse, which isn't the best team in the world. There's no homerism in this call. It's just the more and more I look at it, the more and more I go, I've got to bump them up because, well, they're a good football team, and them sleeping through a game and they still win by 10, because that's basically what it felt like, and making as many mistakes as you can against an inferior opponent. It's hard to get up in college football at times when you've just coming off such a moral victory, or no, not a moral victory, but just a letdown game after coming against Florida State, coming back, having a great game against them, just one of those emotional rides, and I'd take Florida State as a tough out. Number 3, I have Alabama. Great team, watching the eye test. As I said, for Iowa rationale, I have eyes, 2 of them. And when I watch Alabama, it's a great game to watch. My number 4 pick, Notre Dame sliding in. And actually, it's weird because the team that I do support was the team I was leaving out for a while, because I was like, well, they lost to Clemson, and am I just bumping them up because I like Notre Dame? But I kept leaving them out because I go, all the injuries have got to catch up at some point. They got to catch up, and they haven't yet. And with Stanford slipping up, I still view Stanford as a tough out, but if they beat that, I don't see how they don't make it in the top 4. And I like one thing that all of us did not do. None of us put Iowa in the top 4.
I thought about it, but then I had to say, they're having a great year, but I don't know if great year translates to 4, even though you're undefeated.
And they're going to lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game.
I think we.
Well, okay, that's a different discussion. That's a different discussion later on down the road if everything plays out. And that's another thing to look forward to here on Orange Pulp. We'll be right back after this break.
Dun, 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 dun.
Welcome back to the action here on Orange Pulp.
You wanted me to do that.
I did. I think America wanted you to do it.
I don't know about that.
So,
Brian, I just want to add something quick. I know we're coming back from this, sort of fake break right now. But our friend here, Carrie Breddy, had put on Twitter maybe a few minutes ago. We didn't cover Cortica Jug. And you being from the southern tier, I would have thought you might have thought about that. But
did Carrie tweet out to us?
She didn't tweet out to us, but she tweeted out. And so
if she didn't tweet out to us, then there's no point talking about it.
But I think we have to, though. So for those of you that don't know, and there are probably some people that are watching, but
I'm learning a little bit about this.
Yeah, and I attended.
I'm from the area, so I understand it, and I'm rolling my eyes just so everyone's aware.
Well, and I went to Ithaca my first 2 years of college, so I was kind of part of this situation. But it looks like, for the what they call sometimes the biggest little rivalry in NCAA football, of course, at the Division III level. But there was a Sports Illustrated article about this going back about, 15 plus years or whatever. And but Cortland's won the last 6. And so Ithaca, I don't know what that says about their program or where they're at right now. Of course, we know Coach Schaefer's son is the quarterback at Ithaca. But, once I left Ithaca and I transferred to the University at Albany, I became a SUNY guy. So I got to root for the Red Dragons. I can't possibly root for the Bombers anymore. So I'm excited to see that Cortland won.
Well, thank you for staying tuned during that interesting, amazing segment. Back to games that we actually care about here on Orange Pulp.
Wow.
Talking basketball. Zach, a certain ACC team did not well. They underperformed in their first game of the season.
Yes,
Zach,
Syracuse did underperform in their first game against Lehigh.
But Syracuse got a win in their first game. I know a team that lost in the ACC. With your minute, talk
about State, the Wolfpack,
NC State, the NC State minute by Zach about their. What happened for NC State basketball? Go.
And in the season opening game, season debut for the Wolfpack, they laid a goose egg against William and Mary.
Hey, but don't sleep on the Tribe, though, because the Tribe have been a team that gets into the NIT. They gave North
Do you know
Carolina
what the NIT stands for?
Yeah, you're going
to
give me
in
that,
tournament.
Yeah, you give me that cliche thing. How about the NIT was big before the NCAA tournament was big? But again, I'm older than the two of you, so I don't think not a good loss to start the season. But they're one of the best
when
teams.
You lose by 17.
Wow.
Tim, you're interrupting the minute. Go.
NC State lost by 17 at home. High hopes for the season going in. I watched that game and I say, I'm sorry. I see the Wolfpack.
Oh, he threw his phone.
I threw the phone down on the table because I need both hands to make this point. I saw the Wolfpack as a team that could possibly surprise a lot of people and compete for the ACC championship. Surprise the UNCs, surprise the Dukes, surprise the Notre Dames, surprise any of the other top teams. I watched that game against William and Mary, and I said...
I'm sorry for your loss.
And I said, this is disgusting. Mark Gottfried, I love you. I think you're a great coach. But the team this year is young, and we're relying on Cat Barber. Cat Barber, I think he has some pro potential. He's not going to be a superstar at the next level, but he's fast, hence the nickname Cat. He's fast. He's quick, he's agile, he can shoot, he can get to the hoop, he can facilitate offense, which in that respect, that's great. But there's not quite that inside presence. We have Malik Abdul-Abu.
10 seconds.
Which I think he's really good.
From Boston,
yeah,
good player.
And I've watched him for several years now, and I think that he's really talented. BJ Anya is my favorite player on the team. I'm wrapping it up now. But I think that BJ, he's lost a lot of weight. He's getting quicker. We need to get him as that force in the middle for the Wolfpack who can get in there, block a ton of shots a game, grab a bunch of rebounds, and be able to just do nothing but dunk it home 6 or 7 times a game.
Now to Tim, what game intrigued you? What game do you want to talk about?
Well, we know where I'm going to go with this, right? So the Danes take on Kentucky, and they lose by 13. And, it's apples and oranges here, no pun intended, because Lehigh is a very good team in the Patriot League. So the fact that Syracuse only won by 10 points, again, should have won by a lot more. But remember, this is a young team, too, where your 2 stars are Michael Benajay and Trevor Cooney. Good college players, but stars on this team, but not true stars overall, really.
Zach, I know you want to add
Zach,
a name real quick.
interject.
I see Trevor Cooney. I've watched him play for a couple of years now. I don't think he's a star.
No, right, and I don't think he's a star period either. But my point is for this team, that's who they're marketing. You go to Dick's Sporting Goods and you're finding, the number 10 jersey, so that's who they're marketing. If those
Which I find to be ridiculous.
I agree, but I guess maybe they can't put Malachi Richardson on yet or what have you. Tyler Lydon. So when those are your sort of stars for your team, I don't think that Syracuse fans should be expecting massive blowout wins early in the season, no matter who they're playing. Maybe they only win by 15. Maybe they only win by 12 or whatever the case may be. But the win is a win, which is what Brian said earlier. But I will say, and I mentioned too that Syracuse is unranked. But I will say, when you look at some of these games, and Georgetown losing to Radford yesterday as well, I don't know whether they should have lost or whatever. I didn't even watch that game, just kind of knew about it. But the Danes only lose by 13 to the number 2 team in the country. I know Coach Will Brown, Coach and I communicate sometimes on Twitter and via email. I know he's not happy with the loss, but that's a great way to start if you're Albany, proving that you're going to be the class of the America East. And I don't want to hear anything from these Stony Brook Seawolves fans that they think they're actually going to make the tournament. Every year you face us in the championship game. We beat you on ESPN2, so just mark your calendar. It's going to happen again.
You're listening to Orange Pulp. For those watching on Periscope, send your questions to OrangePulp1 on Twitter. Because of the breakdown, we can't see the screen for any questions coming in. For those watching on YouTube, click the subscribe button. Also follow us on Twitter, like I said, at OrangePulp1. Also, if you're listening on SoundCloud, or if you're not listening on SoundCloud, get over there, subscribe to our page. We're going to be uploading previous shows to that as well as we're expanding Orange Pulp. Now,
I just want to throw this score out there. Tim, I know you told us about it a little earlier. Butler against the Citadel. I'm just going to throw the score out there. 144 for Butler to 71. How many times have you seen a school put up 71 points and still get doubled up?
I was going to say, expecting you to say lose, but in college basketball, if you score 71, usually you win.
Yeah.
Usually you win, but we'll go back to the Celtics again. Brad Stevens' system, I think, still in place there at Butler. And 144 points is a lot, though. I mean, how bad is the Citadel? I mean, seriously. Good start for Butler. What
Butler
can
could
you
have
say?
gone out there and not played the second half and still would have tied. They scored 71 in the first half.
Wasn't there a kid, and I think it was last year or a couple years ago, and I don't remember if it was Division II or
Are you
Division
talking the high
III.
school kid that scored over 100 points?
I thought it was at the college level. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was
there
at the
was
high
a kid
school
in
level.
Division III.
Yeah.
And he put up 124.
Yeah.
Was that the weird system where they full court press on a fast break and do the? I remember that being one of the. Yeah, that system is not basketball.
Well, they play the old women's basketball rules, which used to be 3-on-2 on both sides of the court. Seriously, they don't even send anybody back on defense. So when you see a score like that for Butler, that's the first thing I think about.
Yeah.
Did they recruit this kid and now he's on the team and then he's jacking threes and now they're going to average 150 a game?
Butler had 7 players in double figures.
That's crazy. Syracuse doesn't have him on the schedule this year. Thank God.
Now, in transition to It's Sunday, and Sundays were made for football, the NFL.
Are you sure? You better check with God on that.
God loves football. Why? That's what he should have done.
All right.
And we just got that awkward moment. So, what team? Now, don't give me so we can set the parameters of the game. Don't give me the exception team like the Giants sneaking in at 9-7 and then winning the Super Bowl, because that can happen. But give me. No, that wasn't a.
Pat says no, it can't happen.
That wasn't a Patriot shot. That's just to set the parameters of the game. What teams from each division do you see legitimately having a shot to win a Super Bowl? Now, I know if you make the playoffs, you have a shot. That's the way it sets up. But give me the legitimate teams right now.
Let's go Cats. Let's go Panthers. Let's go Panthers.
Who else do you have from the NFC?
I don't even care because the Panthers are going to the Super Bowl.
Okay, what about the AFC? If you're going to be yes, he is a home fan of the Carolina Panthers. If you couldn't tell, what do you got for the AFC?
I think that we're looking at it.
Yeah, we're looking at New England without a doubt, because the Bills and the Jets are kind of like canceling each other out. And although that maybe one of them could actually end up with a wild card, they're both 5-4, so
one of them's going to sneak in.
They might get in. The Bengals are running away with the North.
They're
Again,
not for real.
you never. I don't think they're for real long
Andy
term.
Dalton can't win a playoff game.
Well, we don't know yet. Ginger Lightning. Isn't that what you
Lightning
call him?
can't.
The red rock?
I'll argue against that right now, because he's always had the win-loss record record, but watching the games, it's the difference of, hey, don't get me addicted to a team that's undefeated. He's playing really, really well.
Well, he is playing well, and if you look at the standings right now, I don't know who they would be facing sort of in that first-round playoff game, or if they would get a bye if they continue at this rate.
Well, it's all right now with Denver as well being the...
But Denver has a great defense, but there's a lot suspicious with them on the offensive end. And then you look at the whole AFC South and how bad that is.
Who would have thought
Peyton Manning would be running an offense that you're saying is suspect?
Well, he's going to be breaking the record today, and there's going to be a pause in the game for it during it. That's already been announced that it will happen probably on his first completion because he's 3 yards away from the record.
As it should be.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
Peyton deserves all of the passing records. Greatest quarterback of all time.
Greatest regular season quarterback of all time.
Okay.
So, but back to the divisions, like, who do we think wins the AFC South? I mean, Indianapolis 4-5, Houston 3-5, not out of it, and they look terrible most Sundays.
Yeah. Well, that division's awful.
I will say, put up a fight against the Panthers.
Right.
Took them to overtime on Monday night.
But Andrew Luck's going to be out for who knows how long.
Lacerated kidney.
That's not good.
I saw something. The Colts, they only have one quarterback on their roster right now, and Matt Hasselbeck.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking to Jason Campbell trying to pull him out of retirement.
It's usually what happens, and I'll tell you what, Vinny Testaverde, if he's in good shape at age 50, 60, whatever, you got to give him a call. Parcells would, you know it.
There was the running joke of should Danny Cannell come back and try to come out of retirement to be on the bag.
Chris Winkie.
Yeah. But for the playoff teams, I mean, for the NFC, you have Carolina, obviously.
Well, I mean, you don't want to sleep on Atlanta yet. I mean, they're not what Carolina is, but they're still 6-3.
We've already put them to bed. Falcons are already been put to bed. They're done for the season.
But okay. They can make a wild card run.
Sure.
And then, but that's not going to be a team I'm going to put as a. I see them legitimately having a chance to win it. I would have earlier in the season, but they've come back to earth. Carolina, obviously, as we said before. Green Bay, I'm not going to freak out because of back-to-back losses. Like it's you have Aaron Rodgers, you have a good team, and as he said last year. RELAX.
Well, he said that last year, and I'm not saying that the Minnesota Vikings are a force to be reckoned with in that division either. But they're tied. They're tied right now, and
the Vikings are the second seed right now. Yeah. If I remember correctly.
It looks like they probably would be. Yeah. So I mean, relax, but with caution as well, because
they're playing at home today. They're going to get right back on track. There's an easy win for them. But I say Green Bay. I'll say Seattle. And I picked them at 500, but with the way their season's shaping up, and I have a legitimate thought that they can win a Super Bowl because I've seen it do it so many times before.
Yeah.
And
I have so many concerns about Seattle.
I get that, but at the end of the day, with how good that defense is, Cam Chancellor's back. If Marshawn Lynch gets back on track, if I know the offensive line is suspect, but I look at that team and go. Yep, they can make another run for it. As for the AFC,
I just want to say, not just because I'm in the jersey of the Super Bowl champs, today, but what I'm going to say is that I think there's a genuine hangover because of that loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never normally say that, even though I love conspiracies, but on this side of things, I would say...
You do the odds, it doesn't happen where a team that loses the Super Bowl makes it.
And the way they lost, and they just can't quite seem to get out of that. Now, there's games where Russell Wilson plays very, very well, and he kind of wills them to victory.
And then there's times he holds onto the ball way too long.
So I don't even know who wins this division.
Russell Wilson is on pace to get sacked 62 times this year.
That's right.
62 times.
You're listening to Orange Pulp. Now for the AFC, I mean, Denver, you got to put on there. Their defense is just so good. And if Peyton even is a half a shell of himself, then it'll be fine. And if they can get that running game, actually going, then they can be somewhere. But that defense is just so good. Obviously, the Patriots, I mean, they look like a cheat code at times, which, shot intended.
Take shots.
I mean, Tom Brady's the world's greatest American. I'm actually playing against him in fantasy, so I hope he has a poor game against the Giants.
Living guy ever, probably.
And the Bengals, I have to say they have a legitimate shot because the defense is good. They have so many weapons, and Andy Dalton has taken that next step. He looks good now. He's always had that great win-loss record, but he hasn't been a great quarterback. This year, he is a great quarterback, and he has all of his weapons, and he has Eifert, who's finally healthy. Sanu's playing, but he's not the primary. A.J. Green's healthy. And you have a dual running game with Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard. It's so many offense. offensive weapons, and then on the other side of the ball, they're such a good team that I think Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals could make a legitimate chance at the Super Bowl. You're listening to Orange Pulp. We'll be right back after this break to talk about our final thoughts and our parting gifts. We'll be right back on Orange Pulp.
Dun, 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 dun.
Welcome back to Orange Pulp. For those viewing on Periscope, send your questions to OrangePulp1 on Twitter. We can't see the way it's working out because of the screen having to face by the setup in here. For those watching on YouTube, thanks. Click the subscribe button. I feel like I've said this about 50,000 times, but you got to.
But you only got to do it once, though. You don't have to go through this every time we're on. You can scale it back each time.
Well, you're supposed to reset every time.
Oh, okay.
This is the person who doesn't work in the radio
industry.
industry.
That's right, I don't know this stuff.
The resetting. This is Orange Pulp. That's why. Have you not noticed how we do the resets and on names and everything? That's why.
Tim hasn't really been paying attention. It's fine.
That's true. And then for those listening on SoundCloud, the rest will be uploaded. And final thoughts. Zach zeroing in. What do you got?
Well, not really a big fan of the UFC. Not really a big fan of the mixed martial arts. But I just want to say this. Ronda Rousey had a fight last night against Heather Holm. And Ronda Rousey lost. She has become one of the top 5 names, one of the top 5 athletes in the world.
I was going to say, she's definitely the biggest fighter, which I never would have predicted.
Yeah. I mean, she has become one of the biggest names, one of the biggest celebrities, one of the biggest athletes in the world. And for her to go out there and get knocked out last night, she had a bloody lip. She had blood pouring out of her mouth.
She got kicked in the face.
She got kicked in the face really hard. She had that look in her eye when she stood up like, I don't know where I am. And I think there are going to be 2 schools of thought on this. It's going to be really bad for UFC women's division.
No, it's great because you know what they can sell?
Great.
Yeah.
The rematch is going to be fantastic.
Yeah,
Jump it
that's
up.
what they need.
Because it was
sell a ton of buys.
The argument was, can anyone beat Ronda Rousey? So is this good for the sport? Now you have the rematch factor, which is just going to sell pay-per-view like it's its job, which it is.
And if Rousey wins, then you need a third.
Oh,
you got to have the rubber match.
Yeah,
so.
I did not realize that both of them were going to be undefeated going into the match until last night when I turned it on. And that's right, I found a free live stream. It's fine.
We would never do such a horrible thing. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. But when I turned it on, I said, "Oh, Ronda Rousey, her last 3 fights have lasted a combined 64 seconds."
My favorite quote was, "I save money on UFC fights by just watching Ronda Rousey's fights on Vines," because that's really all the time you needed.
You needed more time today.
I mean, and then last night she goes out there and it goes the entire first round, and she lost that round. I don't care what anybody says. She landed like 3 or 4 punches, had 1 takedown. I was very surprised. And then we're just seconds into the second round. She gets kicked in the face. She's out. Fight's over. New UFC bantamweight champion, Holly Holm?
Yep.
Holly Holm. And so, you know what? Good for her. But, I mean, that's the thing. Nobody knows who she is, and she was undefeated.
You know what I wish? And if she hasn't done it yet, she should. Her middle name needs to have an H. To start it, then
Triple H.
Triple H. That's right. We got to get WWE reference in.
That's right. There we go.
I think she should.
Tim's takes. What do you got?
Well, first of all, my real quick bias take, and this is going to get rid of so many of viewers that we've either had or will have, but this is like my Super Bowl today. I absolutely cannot stand the Giants because usually, and this has nothing to even do with the Super Bowls or the Madden simulations, as I like to call them, that were on TV, but usually any Giant fan is also a Yankee fan. They are also a Knicks fan, and they quite possibly could even be a Rangers fan, an Islanders fan, a Devils fan, a Sabres fan. I don't know. And so for me, I just want to see all those fans cry, especially when the Giants lose. That's real quick. The other thing is we talked about it earlier, and I'm not going to go into grave depth, but I get a little nervous this week if sports can heal. We've seen it happen after September 11th. We've seen it happen after some other crazy tragedies on college campuses and various other places. And we're really starting to get into a world right now that, as someone who's seen some of these things happen, and you guys have seen these things happen, I don't want to say I'm fearful, but I'm scared. And it seems like it's, just more and more frequent that these tragedies are happening. And even here in the United States, with the just polarization of races and politics and individuals all on opposite ends of the spectrum, I just hope in some way, shape, or form, and it's never going to be easy, that we can find a way to accept people, understand people, and bring people together, because that's the only way that we're going to somehow bring a stop to some of these massive tragedies. So it's like a non-sports thing for me, but the world just doesn't seem very safe today.
You know what the first major sports gathering was after 9/11?
High school football.
No.
Major
sports.
Okay.
What was it?
It was a WWE SmackDown taping.
Really?
Yeah.
And
it was on the 13th.
And they're very patriotic with how they go about everything.
It was a super patriotic show.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon walks down to the ring in his signature strut, and he says something to the effect of, "America, we love you,